Mr. President, we thank Special Representative of the UN Secretary-General for West Africa and the Sahel, Leonardo Simão, for his report on the current state of affairs in the region. We support the work of the office within the framework of its mandate. We are closely following the developments in the region. We note with concern the growing infiltration of terrorists from the Sahel into the coastal states of the Gulf of Guinea, the increased coordination between various groups, as well as the level of their technical equipment and resources. The surge in militant activity in Nigeria, where 1,458 civilians were killed between January 1st and February 10th, 2026 alone, is also a cause for concern. The full potential of terrorist groups operating in the Sahel was revealed during the clashes with terrorists in Mali, which began on April 25th. It became clear that the militants were capable of carrying out simultaneous massive attacks on the largest cities of the country and had the necessary financial and technical means for this. The UN Security Council assessed these events in a press statement supported by Russia on May 15, 2026, which explicitly states that these attacks carried out by the Support Group for Islam and Muslims and the Front for the Liberation of Azawad are terrorist. The latest report of the UN Secretary-General additionally reports on civilian and military losses as a result of these attacks. We express our condolences to the government of the Republic of Mali over the death of Defense Minister Sadio Kamara, who personally engaged in battle with the terrorists who attacked his house in Kati. We note the decision of the President of the Transitional Period, A. Goita, to assume the duties of the head of the Republic's military department during this difficult period. It is indicative that in his televised address on April 28, President Goita directly pointed to the presence of external sponsors of the coordinated terrorist attack on Bamako and the country's largest cities. We share these assessments. It is obvious that these and other destructive actions were planned and carried out with the direct participation of external forces that short-sightedly remain under the illusion that they will always be able to control terrorists. There is information about the assistance of the Kiev regime to gangs, information about the supply of UAVs and the training of militants by Ukrainian military instructors is confirmed. It is also surprising that against the backdrop of the UN Security Council's condemnation of the terrorist activities of the Support Group for Islam and Muslims and the Front for the Liberation of Azawad, as well as the atrocities committed by them and replicated by the media, representatives of the Front are giving interviews in Paris. We are seriously concerned that against the backdrop of calls for effective regional anti-terrorist cooperation, members of the groups are welcome in Europe. We are not surprised that the terrorists decided to try their hand at northern Mali again in early July. At Agilok and Anafis, their attacks were repulsed. The groups suffered significant losses. Both in April and this time, the Malian Armed Forces and the Russian Afrika Korps became a barrier against terrorist attacks. The Russian Federation, for its part, will continue to provide effective assistance to the Sahel states in the fight against terrorism. Given the evolving security situation in the Sahel, we believe it is appropriate to recall that Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso are at the forefront of efforts to combat trans-African terrorist groups. They deserve the support of the international community and regional organizations more than ever. In this regard, we are perplexed by the refusal of Western members of the UN Security Council to directly mention the name of the Confederation of Sahel States, ACU, in Security Council documents. You can pretend that the ACS does not exist as much as you want, but this will not lead to a decrease in the terrorist threat in the region. Mr. President, we welcome the commitment of the members of the Confederation of Sahel States and ECOWAS, as noted in the report. to the progressive restoration of relations on a mutually beneficial basis. We note the positive decisions in this regard taken following the meeting of the community leaders on December 14, 2025 in Abuja. Collective efforts are the key to effectively countering the expanding terrorist threat in the region. We share the assessments presented in the report on the consistent efforts of ECOWAS to strengthen stability in the community area. At the request of the government, the ECOWAS response force was rapidly deployed in Benin in December and succeeded in stopping the coup attempt. Following the presidential elections held in Guinea in December, the country's participation in the work of ECOWAS bodies was restored. We highly appreciate the active work of the UN Secretary-General's Special Representative for West Africa and the Sahel, Leonardo Simão, in the interests of building confidence in the region and creating conditions for dialogue between countries in order to overcome the existing challenges in the field of security and development. We are satisfied with the results of the work of the Cameroon-Nigeria Mixed Commission, within the framework of which the complex process of demarcation of the relevant state border is nearing completion. We note the ongoing assessment of the UN Integrated Strategy for the Sahel. We believe that this process will make it possible to draw useful lessons from the previously made numerous, but not always effective, efforts and will make it possible to orient the activities of the World Organization towards solving key tasks for the region, including in the field of sustainable development, as well as to develop support tools that take into account the interests of the regionals. We reaffirm our principled position in defense of the sovereignty, unity and territorial integrity of all countries in the region. We call on the international community to consolidate its support for the ACS, which against its will has been at the forefront of the fight against the growing terrorist threat. We are convinced that this will be facilitated by a constructive dialogue between the African Union and the Economic Community of West African States and the Sahel Troika. For our part, we will continue to make a constructive contribution to achieving stability in the region. We will continue to provide assistance to the Sahel states on a bilateral and multilateral basis, including in increasing the combat capability of the National Armed Forces. Thank you for your attention.